coordinate systems. In an AutoCAD drawing, everything is located in 2D space by a set of Cartesian or XY coordinates. The 2D coordinate system, for the time being, will stick with 2D to keep things simple. It is defined by a horizontal and a vertical axis. The horizontal axis is called the x-axis, and the vertical axis is called the y-axis. The x-axis and the y-axis intersect at the origin of the coordinate system. The two axes define a plane called the xy plane. The coordinates of any point on the drawing area are its distances from the origin along the x-axis and the y-axis. To keep coordinates simple, most drawings are created in the upper right quadrant. This locates the origin, 0, 0, at the lower left corner of the drawing area so that all coordinate values can be positive numbers. Let's see the first method of using the coordinate system, the absolute coordinate system. In school days, you might have been familiar with drawing on a graph sheet. Likewise, working with AutoCAD software is also similar to working with a graph. The standard way of feeding coordinates to AutoCAD is by typing them into the command line and pressing Enter. Entering absolute XY coordinates. Enter absolute coordinates as pairs of numbers separated by a comma without spaces, because this is AutoCAD and not English punctuation. The x value is always expressed first, and then the y value is represented. Let's see an example of how to use the absolute XY coordinate system. Now we're going to draw a square using absolute XY coordinates. Here are the steps. Type L on the command line and press Enter. The command line displays command _ line specify first point. Type 3, 3 and press Enter. Now the command line displays specify next point or undo. Type 6, 3 and press Enter. Now the command line displays specify next point or undo. Type 6, 6 and press Enter. And then type 3, 6 and press Enter. Type C and press Enter to close the line. This is the basic coordinate system used by all. Drawing this way satisfies the need for precision. But you will have to do a lot of calculating to figure out the absolute coordinates of every point in the drawing. Relative XY coordinate system. Where absolute coordinates are always based on the origin of the drawing, that is 0, 0, relative coordinates are based on the last point entered. Input of the coordinates itself is the same as absolute XY coordinates, but you've got to tell AutoCAD that the location you're entering is based on the last point by typing an @ symbol before the coordinates. For example, entering @5 and 4 makes a new point, 5 units to the right and 4 units above the last point, but not from the origin. Let's draw a square using relative XY coordinates. Here are the steps. Type L on the command line and press Enter. At the Specify First Point prompt, type 5, 5 to select a start point and press Enter. Now the command line displays Specify Next Point or Undo. Type @5, 0 on the command line and press Enter to draw a line in horizontal direction or x-axis direction. @ symbol tells AutoCAD that the next point is relative to the point you just entered rather than that of the origin. From this point, AutoCAD draws lines 5 units in the x direction and 0 units in the y direction. Now the command line displays like this. Specify next point or undo. Type @0, 5 on the command line and press Enter to draw a line in vertical upward direction. Type @-5, 0 on the command line and press Enter. Note, the negative x value indicates that the line should be drawn backward from the last point. The negative y value indicates that the line should be drawn downward from the last point. Thus, the line is drawn for 5 units in -x direction. Now, type C on the command line to close the line and press Enter. Thus, the sketch is created using the relative coordinate system. Relative polar coordinate system. Relative polar coordinates are like relative xy coordinates. Here, both the coordinates use the symbol to tell AutoCAD to draw the line from the last point, not from the origin. In relative polar coordinates, the two values are distance and angle, rather than offsets along the x and y axes. AutoCAD knows that you're entering polar coordinates because instead of a comma, you typed a left angle bracket. For example, entering @5, 30 in a line command prompt tells AutoCAD to draw a line segment 5 units in the x direction and 30 units in the y direction from the last point. Entering @5, angle 30 tells AutoCAD to draw a line 5 units long at an angle of 30 degrees. Here are the steps to draw a square using relative polar coordinates. Type L on the command line and press Enter. At the Specify First Point prompt, type 5, 5 on the command line and press Enter. Now the command line displays like this: Specify Next Point or Undo. Type @7, angle 0 on the command line and press Enter. Remember that the @ symbol means relative to the last point. AutoCAD draws a line 7 units long at an angle of 0 degrees. Whereas 0 degrees lies in the direction of the positive x-axis and angles are measured in a clockwise direction. Now the command line displays this: Specify Next Point or Undo. Type @7, angle 90 to draw a line in vertical upward direction and press Enter. Type @7, angle 180 and press Enter. Now the line is drawn in the negative x direction. Type C on the command line and press Enter to close the line. Note, with relative polar coordinates, you should always enter positive values. Most users find that relative polar coordinates are the most logical method to coordinate entries in AutoCAD. You don't need to calculate displacements in the x and y directions, and distances are actual distances. Direct distance entry. An elaboration of relative polar coordinates is called direct distance entry, or DDE. When using DDE, you only enter the distance. Specify the angle by dragging the mouse pointer on the screen. Not much hunting and pecking, and no holding down the Shift key. Note, if you're simply dragging the mouse pointer without using the precision aids that AutoCAD provides, then the precision of the drawing will be less. So in order to avoid it, we're going to use the ortho mode. Here are the steps to draw a square using direct distance entry. Click Ortho on the status bar to turn on the ortho mode. Ortho mode forces any lines you draw to be precisely horizontal or vertical. Type L on the command line and press Enter. At the Specify First Point prompt, type 10, 10 and press Enter. Now the command line displays Specify Next Point or Undo. Drag the crosshairs to the right, then type 5 and press Enter. It doesn't matter how far you drag the crosshairs, you're showing AutoCAD the angle, not the distance. AutoCAD draws a horizontal line to the right 5 units long. Now the command line displays Specify Next Point or Undo. Drag the crosshairs toward the top of the screen. Type 5 and press Enter. Then drag the mouse to the left, type 5 and press Enter. And finally type C and press Enter, or simply press the Escape button to exit the command. Thus, the sketch is created using the direct distance entry method.